joining. We're gonna go ahead and get started. And this meeting will be recorded, and we'll share the recording with you guys after the meeting, so that if there's anything that you had question on, you could go back and view it. And otherwise, you can just refresh yourself if you're not applying within the next week or so with what we talked about, and make sure that you're good and prepared to be able to apply when you're ready. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll let everyone on the line from the registrar introduce themselves, so you know who's on the line, and you can ask us questions if you need. Again, my name is Jim Nupp. I'm Chief Operations, Containment, Public Information. I have a lot of different titles, but basically I just work with the public is the takeaway. Mr. Satelli, if you want to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Satelli. I am the Registrar's Chief Legal Counsel. I also oversee the legal department and the recovery fund. So any questions about statute or things of that nature, I'll be here to answer those.
Thank you, sir. All right. Most relevant to this meeting, probably, Miss Marley, if you could introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marley McCormick, and I'm one of the Assistant Chiefs of Licensing, and I oversee the team that reviews license applications and processes requests to maintain licenses.
Thank you, Marley. Mr. Cedric.
Good morning. My name is Cedric Finnan. I'm the Continuous Improvement Process Associate under Mr. Nupp. So I'm going to work to hopefully make these trainings a little bit better for you as we move on throughout the year. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. And Miss Jessie, finally.
Hi, my name is Jessie Winter. I'm a Public Information Liaison with the Arizona Registrar of Contractors, and I'm also the Outreach Coordinator and help schedule these events.
Yep, and I was going to say, Jesse worked pretty hard to put this together, so hopefully you guys find some value in it, and hopefully it helps you as you apply for your license. All right, so before we get started, and I'm handling the muting of all of you, but if you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or feel free to also use the chat feature, which is rule number 2. If you're not familiar with the chat feature, if you just go down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see some options, and you'll see the ability to open up a chat window, and you can type your question in there. Jesse will be monitoring that, as well as sharing some information with you guys to include contact information for licensing department, as well as we can answer questions there, or just get your question and answer to the group if it seems more relevant to answer to the group. Finally, and I already said it, we are recording this, and we will be sending out a link. We'll be uploading it to YouTube, and we'll send you the link so that you can rewatch it at your leisure. All right. So what we want you to take away is that, number one, that you're comfortable using our website. We just launched a portal that you can actually apply for your license, renew licenses, perform maintenance items to your license, like change out a QP or update an address or phone number, as well as file a complaint. So number one is we want you to be comfortable using the website. Number two, the big reason that we want to have this meeting with you is we want to try to decrease deficiencies. There are a lot of deficiencies in our applications, and then, in fact, depending on the month, we range from 20 to 40% of the applications coming in that have deficiencies in them. Deficiencies are they just serve to slow down your application process. So everyone has an interest in decreasing the number of deficiencies that we have in the application. So what we want to talk to you about are some of the common errors that you can avoid. And then number 3 is we're obviously here to answer any questions you guys may have before you're filing an application or while you're filling it out. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. McCormick.
Okay, so I'm going to go over some common application errors. And so the top 5 errors that we see are, first, the qualifying party's experience. There's either not enough detail, or it's not addressing the classification that's being applied for. And so also you need to keep into consideration, are you applying for a residential license, a commercial license? Make sure you indicate that you have experience in both areas. and then we can accept either hands-on experience, the qualifying party actually doing that trade, or supervising that trade. So it can be hands-on or managerial experience, so making sure that the qualifying parties indicated what type of experience that they have. For some of our larger licenses, like the general contractor licenses, it's important to indicate that ground-up experience, that the qualifying party has ground-up experience, because that's something we look for our KB1, our KB2 licenses, and the B license. If you're an example is if you're applying for our CR34, the painting license, it's not relevant if you only talk about welding experience. So keep in mind what you're applying for, read that description of that license, because that's what we're looking for when we're comparing experience, and just making sure that you're keeping it relevant and addressing everything that that license does, and indicating residential and commercial experience if you're applying for a dual license. You can always add extra pages if you run out of room for filling out the experience. So on the portal, there's an upload for any additional documents you have. Some people upload a resume or just an entire page of experience that they've written up. You can certainly do that if there's not enough room on the portal to fill your experience. The second most common error is with your bond. And so there can be many different errors with your bond. We have a general bond form that you'd give to your bond company, but sometimes you or the bond company forgets to have you sign, and we need an authorized signer on the application to sign the bond, so it's important to remember that you do that. If the license classification's not on there, because we need to know what license classification the bond is covering, if that's not on there, that's a deficiency. The entire name of the entity not being on there, including any DBAs that the application has, that's also a deficiency. If the bond company leaves your DBA off, or if you don't put like LLC or Inc. at the end of your entity name. It's frequent that a bond is not submitted with the application, so that would be a deficiency. And finally, there's a certain bond coverage that is needed. We'll go over that in more detail, but not stating the bond coverage on the bond, or not breaking out what amount covers resident and what amount covers commercial, that's also a deficiency. Our third error is forgetting to submit government-issued ID. So every person on the application, including the qualifying party, needs to submit a copy of a government-issued ID. This is most commonly a driver's license. Some people submit passports. And then those IDs also need to be active. So it can't be an expired ID. And so forgetting to submit that, or submitting an ID that has expired, would be a deficiency. Number 4 is testing. So every one of our license classifications requires the statute and rules exam be taken, and then most of them also require a trade exam. So not submitting those exams is a major deficiency. It's also a time-consuming one if you have not tested it. If your qualifying party hasn't tested yet, that could take some time to correct. So it's important that testing is taken prior to submitting the application. There are waivers for testing in certain circumstances that I will get into in more detail. But if you are going to use a waiver, that would also need to be submitted with your application at the time that you're applying. And then finally, our 5th most common error are background checks. So each person on the application, including the qualifying party, must submit a background check, and those background checks can't be older than 90 days old. And we have a specific vendor that we use for our background check, so you want to make sure you go to the link on our website to take it. I'll provide more information on that in later slides, but not submitting a background check would also be a deficiency.
Cool. And Barley, I actually gave you remote control of my my mouse, so you can guide the PowerPoint on your own.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so what is the Registrar of Contractors? So before we get into more detail about the application process, I wanted to share some information about our agency. So we have about 100 staff members with 3 main departments that they work in, so licensing, compliance, and the legal department. The licensing department processes approximately 4,000 applications per year. We also issue those licenses, and we maintain them. So anytime you need to do any type of update to your license, that would be processed through the licensing department. The compliance department investigates complaints for both licensed and unlicensed contractors, and they recommend citations. The legal department supports the licensing and compliance department and directs cases through our administrative complaint process. So the compliance and legal department may get involved with applications if a prior license was disclosed, especially if there are complaints on that license. Also, if someone that's on the application has a felony, that would be reviewed by our legal department. So the licensing department's processing it, but we're also receiving support from our other two departments. And then the legal department also oversees the agency's recovery fund, which is available to residential homeowners. I'll get into more information about the recovery fund in later slides. But every residential and dual contractor pays into the recovery fund, and that's available to residential homeowners. Okay, so how to submit a license application. The primary means that we're going to talk about in this presentation is using our online portal. It's kind of a one-stop shop for your entire application to get it submitted to us. So it's convenient. You can submit that anytime. It doesn't need to be during our business hours. It's accessible. You can do it anywhere that you have internet and a computer, and it make sure that your application is complete. So it's going to remind you of all of our requirements, and so it eliminates some of those deficiencies if you're just filling out our paper form and maybe it wasn't as clear what was needed. It's also our main method of receiving applications at this time. About 90% of them are submitted through the portals. That is where we see most of them. So if you did want to mail your application and if you didn't want to use the portal, we have PDF forms on our website. If you're not able to access our website, you can call us and we can have one mailed out to you. And then you could also submit it in person, but due to current COVID guidelines, it's recommended that you call beforehand so that we can make sure we have a licensing staff member in the office to assist you. You may be turned away if you just show up into our office without setting up an appointment beforehand. Okay, so the first step to applying for your license on our portal is making an account. So in order to create an account, there's some information that you need to set that up, and I'm going to go over that in our next couple of slides. And this account, you can link it to any entities that you're on. So if you have licenses on two different entities, you can use your one account and be able to see everything going on with those licenses, and you can submit requests for those licenses, even if they're on different entities. So the first step in creating an account is you need to have your authorized representative's information. So that includes their name, their date of birth. They need to have a valid email address. A lot of communication with the portal is sent via email, so you want to make sure that's a good email address that's checked frequently. You need to indicate what your preferred method of contact is. And there's some security questions to set up in case you ever get logged out or locked out of that account. Then you can enter your security questions to be able to have access again. And then you also need to have your business entity's information. So that includes what the type of entity is an LLC, a sole proprietorship, the name of the company, so the LLC or corporation, or for your sole proprietor or partnership, that would be your full legal name. And then if you're an entity, if you're applying as an entity, so an LLC or a corporation, you need to have your Arizona Corporation Commission file number. If you don't know this number, you could always go to the Corporation Commission's website, search your entity, and that number comes right up. And then the entity needs to have a valid email address as well. Okay, so Now, someone just asked for this, but it will be on this slide as well. It's the URL for our portal, so that it's found on our website, roc.az.gov. And then once you're on our website, you're going to look for the My Account page. And so this is our website, and we have My Account right there in the upper left-hand column of the screen, right next to the Home button. You're going to click My Account. And if you already have an account with us, you can log in with your email and password that you made. But you can also, if you linked it to like a Gmail account or your Twitter account, there's buttons there to log in that way. And there is an option to check and see if you already have an account so that you don't make a duplicate one. To create the account, you'll need to have all the information we just talked about for the authorized signer, like their name and their email address, and you'll need to set up your security questions. Once that's submitted, you're going to get an email address at the email that you indicated. You're going to need to click the link to activate your account, and once your account's activated, you can log in and review your dashboard. Once you're in your dashboard, you'll have an option to connect your account to your dashboard. You're going to want to do that by searching your entity name. And then you will fill in that information we discussed: business type, business contact information. And once that information is filled out, you're going to request to connect that entity to your account. If this account already exists in Salesforce, in our online system, we will reach out and talk to an authorized representative to make sure that we can connect the entity if it's not an email address that we recognize. If you're a brand new company, you've never had a license with us before, that connection will happen automatically.
Marley, thanks. If I could pause you, do you mind just showing this step so far?
In the portal?
In the portal?
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
Yep. So I'll stop sharing and I'll let you take over.
Okay.
And just to answer your question, Cecilia, if you're submitting an application online, do you mail in the original documents such as bonds? You'll actually upload that into the portal itself, and you'll be able to submit everything online. So no, you would not have to mail in the original.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so I am, this is our portal. This is where I am on our website, the My Account tab. That's what I clicked to get here. And so if you already have a login, it says, yes, I just want to log in, enter your email and your password. If you need to register, this is your very first time on the portal, you'll click no, I need to register, and you're going to enter this information that we discussed in order to make your account. And so once you've made that and you're ready to log in, mine is tied in with my Gmail account, so I'm just going to click sign in with Google. And then it will take me to my dashboard. And so if I need to renew or apply for a license, I'm going to click this button here. And then I'm attached to this entity, so I have the option to start a new application, or if I already have licenses that are attached to it, I have the option to renew and do some other functions. So if I want to do start new application for this entity, I will click there. If, say, I now have a second entity I need to connect to my account, I'll click down here to add a business entity to my account. And then I'll just type in that entity structure. From a dropdown, I'll pick the entity structure, and then I'll type in the entity name. And then continue, and it's gonna search records at the Arizona Corporation Commission. This search can take a while because it's checking many records, so it's not broken, it's just searching for them.
Marley, while that's searching, I'm wondering if you can address Danetta's question in the chat. She's asking, we had a license, but it's now expired. I'll also qualifier. Can they still use the same company information?
Yes, so as long as that company is still active and in good standing at the Arizona Corporation Commission, you can certainly reapply under that entity. So you would want to make your account and then search for that entity like I just did here with that search function, and then you would connect to it, and then you can apply for a license under that entity. Okay. So I am adding this new entity to my account. So I'm just going to fill in this information so that I can connect to it. All right. Since I'm not connecting to a real entity, it gave me this error. You shouldn't see that with yours. It would just give you the option to connect to that entity, and you'd hit connect, and then it would be like it is down here where you can see the entity and you can choose to start a new application. And then I will go in over what's needed for the application back on the slideshow. I'll show you what it looks like when you're applying on the portal. Okay, so this is what the application looks like. There's these first couple of pages are instructions and also a checklist for you to know what you're going to need to upload. And then you can use this column to navigate throughout the application, and you'll just fill in what the you to enter. So asking if this is a tiered entity, what the name of the entity is, if there's a DBA. So you'll answer it's kind of a questionnaire. You'll answer what's applicable to you. So if there's a DBA, I'd enter the DBA here. For workers' compensation, for here, and you'll check which one is applicable to you. So for bond information, you'll enter what type of bond that you'll be using. So you can just navigate this and go through the application process. But I will get back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so there are a couple entity types that you can apply under. We have a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, a limited liability company or an LLC, and a trust. So regardless of if you're going to be applying on our paper app or online, you first need to know what type of entity you're going to be applying for. Because especially if you're a corporation or an LLC, you need to have that established at the Arizona Corporation Commission prior to applying. The name of the entity needs to be listed on our application, and it must match exactly the criteria related to the entity type. So sole proprietorships and partnerships must be the name as it appears on a government issued ID. LLCs and corporations must state the name exactly as it's filed with the Arizona Corporation Commission. And then a trust must be named exactly as it's listed on the trust certificate. And if you're an LLC or a corporation, your entity status must be active and in good standing by the time we receive your application. And so that's something you'd set up with the Arizona Corporation Commission. And then it's optional, but you can have a DBA or doing business as long as it meets the criteria that we'd look at. So that DBA name can't state a scope of work that you're not going to be licensed to do. So that's a criteria we look at when approving DBAs. We also recommend that you register that name with the Arizona Secretary of State. So DBAs don't get registered at the Arizona Corporation Commission, but they can be registered at the Arizona Secretary of State. And you can add a new DBA to your license or remove an old one or change it at any time. And you do that with a name change form that you would submit to the registrar. Okay, so the next step is deciding what license classification you're going to be applying for. So we have 155 different license classifications that cover a wide variety of scopes of work. If you don't know what license classification you need to apply for, you can search on our website and read the different classification descriptions. And then you also need to know, are you only going to be doing residential work, only commercial work, or if you're going to be doing both, you'd want to apply for a dual license. And it's important to know early on what classification you're going to be applying for, because this will dictate what exams you need to take. And you need to have your exams taken prior to submitting the application. And this will also play into the amount of bond coverage that you need to have. And so knowing this will help you complete the rest of the application. On our website, we have a license classification requirements form, and so that will show you how many years of experience are needed for each license classification and also what the exams are. So if you search on our website, license classification requirements, that form will show up and it has that broken down for each classification. If you're still not sure what classification to apply for, we have a scope determination request form that's available on our website. And you can email or mail that in to us, and our scope committee will review your request and come back with one, sometimes two recommendations for which license would fit your scope of work. And we try to get these processed within 2 to 3 days of receiving them. If we might need to reach out to you for more information, and so we'd be in contact with you. And then once you get a recommendation from us, you'll know what license fits that scope of work, and you can proceed with applying for that classification. Okay, so the qualifying party, there's requirements for your qualifying party. They're the person that's taking the exams. So they're taking both the statute and rules exams, which is also sometimes referred to as the business exam, and they're also taking the trade exam for the classification that's being applied for. They also need to be the person that has the experience. So most of our licenses require 4 years of experience, some 3 or 2. So they need to have those years of experience. On the application, they need to list the dates that they were employed, how many hours they worked per week there, their title or position that they held, a detailed description of the work that they performed. And then they need to include at least one reference, and the reference can't be someone that's named on the application, but the reference could be a supervisor, a coworker that had direct knowledge of the work they performed, a client if that client had a lot of knowledge about the work that was being performed. It just can't be someone that's named on the application with the qualifying party. And we need to know the qualifying party's name as listed on their government issued ID, their date of birth, their social security number, copy of a government issued ID, residential address for them, phone number, email, their title at the company, if they have any ownership in the company, and they need to submit a background check. Okay. So in addition to the qualifying party, statute defines who else needs to be named on the application. So if it's an LLC, we need any owners of 25% or more. And then if the LLC is member managed, we need all members that are listed on the Arizona Corporation Commission documents to also be on the application. And if it's a manager managed LLC, we need all managers to be listed on the application. If it's a corporation, we need all officers and any functional equivalent to those officers, owners of 25% or more, and then any directors. They also need to be on the application.
So then, Marley, as opposed to some states, I guess just to point out to everybody, we license business entities, if that's not been made obvious so far in the discussion. I'm from Ohio, and there the individual is licensed. In Arizona, though, we actually license a business entity. So what Marley's describing is the QP, the qualifying party, is the individual who's taken the test, has the experience, and will be responsible for the work performed by the license. What she's now talking about is people who have to be named on the license. That can include the qualifying party, but will also include other individuals such as the president, secretary, treasurer. Depending on what titles you're using within the company, these individuals may also be named, and that's what Marley's going through is LLCs. Anybody who owns 25% stock or beneficial interest must also be listed on the license. So in addition, no matter what, the QP is a requirement, but then from there, what she's telling you is also the other individuals who may also have to be listed on the license. So go for it, madam.
Thank you for clarifying that. And then for sole proprietorship, we need to have you, the owner, be named on the application. And for partnerships, we need to have all partners with a distinction of who is a limited partner. And then anybody named on an application has to be at least 18 years of age. Okay, so this is not going to apply to everyone, but some entities are owned by another entity. And in that circumstance, we would need to have a tiered entity chart submitted with the application. So we have these instructions on our website. And in this example, our applicant is Red Corporation down there at the bottom. That's the entity that's applying, and they're owned directly 50% by Blue LLC, and Green Corporation owns the other 50%. We would then need to go up and know who owns Blue LLC, who owns Green Corp, on and on until we capture all owners of 25% or more. And so the owners of 25% or more, as discussed on the previous slide, would need to be named on the application. There needs to be this attestation listed on the chart that says no person or entity other than those listed owns 25% or more of applicant. That needs to be signed by an authorized signer. And then any entities listed on this chart, we need to have an address listed for them. And also we need to have the percentages labeled so we know what percent each entity owns of the applicant.
And if you have a tiered LLC, give us a call. We'll help you and we'll walk you through it. It's about the, I would argue, maybe one of the most complicated things on our application is if you are an LLC that has a tiered structure to your company. Just give us a call. We'll walk you through what all needs disclosed and how far up that chain it has to go to capture that 25%.
Yes, and you can also email your charts to us prior to applying, and we'll approve them, or we'll also let you know any corrections so that that's not hindering your application once it's been submitted. Okay, so each person named on the application, same as a qualifying party, we need to know their name, date of birth, and their social. We need that copy of the government issued ID, contact information for them, what their title is, how much they own, and then they also need to submit a background check. Background checks cost approximately $8 per person. They need to be within 90 days of us receiving the application, and you will get a receipt emailed to you after you pay and go through the background check process, and it's going to give you a profile ID. You'll just enter that profile ID into the application in the portal when it asks for your background check receipt number. So you're not sending us any background check documents, we just need that profile ID. Okay, so each person on the application is going to attest to some disclosures. So if there's been anybody on the application has been named on a prior license and that license was revoked or has a suspension, that information would need to be disclosed. If anybody on the license has ever had a citation or a conviction for unlicensed contracting, that needs to be disclosed. And then if anyone on the application has a felony conviction or a current pending felony charge, that needs to be disclosed as well. The portal will ask you these questions. If you say no, you can move on. If you say yes, it's going to give you more room to fill out that information. And please note that failing to properly disclose any of these could be a material misrepresentation of fact, which could lead to the denial of the application. If an application is denied, the applicants would need to wait 1 year to reapply from the date of the denial.
Just to walk you through each of these prior license information, if you have a revocation or had cases against a prior license, it's not an automatic denial of a license. The things that we would check for are, is there unremedied harm? Was there a recovery fund payout that was not paid back? Those would preclude you from getting a new license, but all you would need to do is either pay the fines that existed or pay back the recovery fund. Unlicensed activity, we we would have no licensed contractors if every licensed contractor who, when applying, said the honest truth, and we denied every unlicensed activity. What we're interested in here is, again, seeing that there's no unremedied harm. Again, there's no problem if you had unlicensed activity. If your experience is coming from unlicensed activity, that's common too. Criminal history felonies. A felony is absolutely not a it's not a automatic denial. We, through our felony or our good character review committee, we consider some of the felonies that we have, and on a 88% basis, we actually pass felony applicants and license them. Felonies that are not going to get passed, more likely than not, are going to directly involve relation to construction. Those are going to be pretty difficult to prove that a license would not enable the convicted individual to further victimize the public if we were able to provide them a license. So those we take in particular and under consideration. But again, it's not an automatic denial, and 88% of the felony applicants we received we approved. So with relation to that now, what Marley is going to talk about is what you would have to submit if you do have a felony.
Yes, so these documents need to be submitted when a felony is disclosed. So that includes the indictment or complaint for the felony, the court's findings or a plea agreement, the pre-sentence report, documentation of the sentence, completion of the sentence, if applicable, satisfaction of any restitution that was ordered, and again, if applicable, an ordering civil rights. You can submit optional supporting documents if you want to, so a letter of explanation, letters of reference, completion of a recovery or another relevant program. You can submit that as well, and these documents will be reviewed by our legal department. And if they need anything additional, they or your application reviewer will reach out. And then you also have the option to petition the registrar to review a felony history prior to applying. That would be done with our petition for review of criminal record form. That's on our forms page of our website. And so that would kind of be pre-reviewed, and a determination would be given to you prior to you applying.
Cool. Thank you, Ms. Marley. On to bonds.
Okay, bonds. So I'm going to go over bond information and bond errors that we see. There's 3 types of bonds. The surety bond is the most common bond. It can be required from any company that's licensed in the state of Arizona to issue surety products. And so rather than paying the entire amount of the bond, you'd be paying a premium to the bond company, similar to an insurance policy. Cash bonds, you would submit the full amount of the bond by cash, money order, or cashier's check directly to the registrar. And then certificates of deposit, you'd need to purchase They need to be a continuous and automatically renewable certificate of deposit that's purchased from a federally insured Arizona bank, saving and loans association, or credit union. And it's assigned to the registrar for bonding purposes. You can contact my department, the licensing department, to get that assignment agreement form if you choose to move forward with a CD as your type of bond. And the advantage to this type of bond is that it gains interest. And then the reason that bond is required is that it provides a form of financial coverage to a consumer to be compensated for any loss. There is no exemptions to bonding. You're required to submit a bond with your license application, and you're required to maintain that bond throughout the life of the license. So if there's ever a bond payout or that bond's canceled, the license will be suspended until we get a new bond or that bond is reinstated. And we'd be in contact with you if that ever was to occur.
And just a note on the bonds, you'll know of completion bonds in the construction industry. This is absolutely not a completion bond. By no means would this license bond, as we know it, cover probably half of a project that you would do in a normal day. It's the amounts are very low, but I'm trying to make the distinction in your mind that this is not a completion bond. It's simply a license bond. So it would help a consumer, but it probably would not cover the entire project if an issue occurred.
Okay, so we have this chart on our website to help you calculate how much bond coverage you need to have. So there's a couple things that factor into this. First, the license type. So that for this column breaks down the license type. From there, you need to have an estimated gross volume. And so you don't need to submit any financial statements to us. This is just an estimate that you come up with. And so if you are a residential general contractor, you think you're going to do less than $750,000, you need to have at a minimum a $9,000 bond. And so these charts will go through that based on the license type and then the estimated volume. And then that last column is telling you what your minimum bond amount would be. If you are a dual contractor, so you're going to do both residential and commercial work, you would need to add up the residential amount and the commercial amount in order to get that total bond amount. So say you're going to be a dual specialty contractor and you do for residential less than was that 3,750 and less than 150,000 for your commercial projects, you would then add those up. So that's that 4250 and 200. You add those up. So the minimum for a specialty dual license is 6,750. This is can be confusing. So you can always email us or call us if you have questions about calculating your bond amount. But this is the chart that we use to determine that bond coverage.
Then one of the deficiencies I remember, it might be old and it might be fixed, Marley, but is that although the total needs to amount to that on the bond paperwork, it actually has to be separated out to specifically delineate the residential coverage and the commercial coverage, such as you see here.
Correct. Yes, so on your bond company would need to break down how much of the bond is going towards commercial coverage and then how much is going towards residential coverage. So on the bond form, which is found on our website, the bond company needs to assign a bond number to it. And then the full name of the entity that's applying needs to be on there, plus a DBA if applicable. The license classification needs to be on there. So if you're applying for KB2, it's broken out right here. It needs to say KB2, dual residential and small commercial. If you're applying for the CR34, it needs to say CR34 wall covering. The penal sums, like we just talked about, needs to be broken down for how much is being applied towards residential coverage and how much towards commercial coverage. The bond needs to have an effective date, and it needs to have a signed and sealed date for the date it was signed by the bond company. And the effective date, if you are applying, sometimes bond companies put a future date on there, like it's not effective for a month after you apply. In order for us to issue the license, that would need to be the same or sooner than when you're applying. And then the signature and title of the authorized signer needs to be on the bond, and then an authorized signer for the application needs to sign the bond in addition to the bond company. The bond company needs to have a notarized signature of the attorney and fact, and then the bond company needs to put their official seal on the bond as well.
And Marley, one other thought with bond, and it's just double checking me. Celia asked earlier, the original bond is not required to be uploaded, is that correct? Or do they have to do
Correct.
anything with the original bond whenever they're a new licensee or a new applicant?
No. So I think it's good for them to maintain the original bond in their own files, but we'll accept electronic bonds. We'll accept a copy mailed to us. It does not need to be the original.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so workers' compensation, we need to see proof of compliance when you're applying. And so there's a couple ways to show proof of compliance. Well, submit us the policy number for your workers' compensation coverage and then the name of the company that's issuing that policy. You could provide proof of self-insurance, or in a couple instances, there's exemptions to workers' compensation. These are listed out in the portal and on our paper forms, but some of these exemptions are a single member LLC that doesn't have any employees, or a sole proprietorship that doesn't have any employees. You'd be exempt from workers' compensation, and you would just check that box on the portal that you're exempt. If you do have employees and you don't meet that exemption, then you need to give us the policy number or proof of self-insurance. The Industrial Commission of Arizona is the agency that regulates workers' compensation, and they're the ones that formulated these exemptions. So if you have questions about that, or if you think you should be exempt, but it's not one of the ones that's stated on our application, you'd reach out to the Industrial Commission of Arizona to discuss that with them.
And as Marley said, we worked with Industrial Commission on the language on the portal. So again, if it doesn't apply to you, it's best to talk to them and ask them what they recommend they indicate on our application.
Okay. So there's additional information that you may need to upload with your portal application. It does not apply to everyone, but a solar warranty is required for certain classifications that do solar work. So you can see if this is required of the classification you're applying for by looking at that license classification requirements form. If you have questions about the solar warranty, feel free to talk with the licensing department. We also have an example of a solar warranty on our website if you want to review what that example warranty would look like. Different reasons you might be canceling a license you currently hold with us or inactivating one. Maybe your new license covers that scope of work of your old one, so you just want to cancel it, or you want to inactivate. You could submit those forms with your portal application, and you do have the option. You can check on that form that you want us to wait to cancel that license until we issue your new license, so there's no lapse in licensure. That's fine. You just check that box on the form, and the day that we approve the new license, we'd cancel your old one. And then there's also a notice of disassociation form that you can submit if you're currently the qualifying party on an existing license and you no longer want to be qualifying party because you're going to be on this new license. You can submit that form as well. All of these forms don't have a fee except for the inactivation form. There's a $50 fee with that, and you can contact us on how to get that payment to us for that form.
Yeah, and just to talk a little bit about inactivation, you guys are applying for a license, so by no means are you thinking about inactivating, but just to put it in the back of your mind, an inactivation allows you to, again, pay that $50 fee and basically freeze your license. So you've paid your fees and your license is good for 2 years. Say a year into it you get injured or ill, you can actually inactivate your license for up to 5 years twice. So say, the economy falls through after your first year and you say, I need to go back to something not construction. You can also you freeze or inactivate your license again, it's 2 5-year periods. So you would want to keep an eye on the termination of that 5 years, because if you don't reinactivate, it would go to a suspended non-renewal state. But it's just a heads up to you guys after you get licensure. Just remember there are a couple different things you can do to just suspend the license. Now, can an employee be a qualifying party on two different entity licenses where the qualifying party has no ownership, but the entities share common ownership? Miss Marley.
Yes, so there needs to, that's A.R.S. 321127. There needs to be common ownership between the two entities, but that does not need to be the qualifying party that has that common ownership. It could be other people that are on both entities having at least 25% of both. And then that only applies to two entities. That's the cap. There can't be 3 or 4 entities, regardless of if there's that common ownership.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
so
Just a recap.
yes. So again, the most common deficiencies are not a detailed or relevant qualifying party experience, not having the bond form filled out completely, forgetting to submit government issued IDs, forgetting to submit testing, or some. So exams are good for 2 years from when they're taken. So having exams that are older than 2 years, and then forgetting to submit background checks or background checks that are older than 90 days old.
Okay, so this is application fees.
Yes, so this chart breaks down what the application fees are. It varies by license type. So you just need to, if you're general commercial, it has the fees right there. And then the residential and dual licenses have those recovery fund fees that need to pay into them. So that's another form of consumer protection. Only residential applicants can apply to the recovery fund, residential homeowners. So that's why commercial only licenses don't pay into the recovery fund. Their clients can't access it.
And the application fee is a one-time fee, and the recovery fund drops to $270. So your renewals would be $270 plus whatever the license fee is. It does not include the application fee. So these are one-time fees, and then it drops from there for renewal. All right. So we're getting to one more.
Yeah, so once you submit your application, per Arizona Administrative Code, we have 60 days. That's the overall time frame to review the application. An administrative review happens within 20 calendar days of receiving it, and then a more substantive review happens within 40 calendar days. This time frame often is much shorter, but that's what our overall time frame is established for the registrar to do this review. So each application is assigned to an application reviewer, and it's very important that you maintain open communication with them. You'll get their phone number and email. You can email them for a status, email them for clarification on deficiencies. If they do issue you a deficiency request, make sure you understand what those deficiencies are and that you're communicative about if you're working on them, if you're going to need a little bit longer to get them. Just maintain that line of communication so we know what's happening with your application. And then once the reviewer receives all deficiencies, or if there weren't any when they reviewed, it will go to final review, and a supervisor will review it and then approve it. If the supervisor finds anything in that final review, the reviewer will reach out to you immediately to get those corrections in.
Cool. And Marley, if you want to answer to where individuals can find study materials for the exams.
Yes, so I will paste that link into the chat. There's a content outline for each exam, and that has study materials listed and a breakdown of what the questions, like the topics for the questions.
There was a question earlier from CJ just asking whether the application could be saved within the portal. And the answer to that is yes. So if you're using the portal to fill out your application at any time, you can save the contents of that, and then you'll be emailed an access code where you can fill it out later when it's more convenient. And then there was one more question from Donetta if continuing education is required.
No continuing education is required for a contractor's license.
Okay. I was trying to find a slide. It disappeared on me. But basically, it's warning you that we're going to send you an email, and it's going to contain three things. So, one, it'll contain a survey. Two, it'll contain the recording or the link to the recording. And then three, what it's going to ask you is when you apply and when you're indicating who is the individual that's actually submitting the application, it's going to ask you to identify whether you attended this seminar or not. So please do mark yes. What we're doing is we're tracking those who attended the seminar versus those who did not to be able to compare the number of deficiencies between the applications. So that's all we're doing with it, but can we get a copy of the slideshow? I believe so, and either way, it'll be, again, included with the recording. So yeah, we should be able to do that, no problem. Does the qualifying party need to be licensed or simply pass the required testing and meet the other criteria? So statute does lay out the exact requirements for a qualifying party, but to say simply what they are is they have to have the experience. So it's typically, well, statute says sets the minimum experience at 4 years. The registrar may reduce that depending on the classification, so that classification requirements document that Marley was talking about earlier. And Jesse, maybe you can post a link to the requirements into the chat. That document will talk about whether you need 2, 4 years, or 6 months of experience. And there's some interplay in there too of if you have 4 years of experience, a trade test may not be required. So do check that that document out. Let's see. The other criteria, again, the exam. And Marley, what else am I missing for the qualifying party?
Both exams and experience, and just Gov ID and background check like everyone else.
Okay.
A reference for the experience.
Is the statute and rules test online, or is an appointment needed? So yeah, you would actually go through our exam proctor for the statute and rules exam. So that's PSI, and so they administer our trade exams as well as our statute and rules exam. I'd like to receive exams needed for each license. Alfred, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking for, but I believe the document license classification requirements form that Jesse just posted may answer your question as to whether an exam is required or not. And if not, maybe you can clarify your question. Marley, what exactly can satisfy the experience requirement? Do you have to work under a company, or can your GC vouch for your level of experience?
So no, it doesn't necessarily need to be like you were employed with a contractor. If you were kind of working, like you were self-employed, that experience can count. So you would want to give probably that general contractor as your reference if they've overseen you do that work. Is that answer your question? Okay.
And then if you could discuss a little bit of how to apply or how to use a waiver for a trade exam for an out-of-state.
Yes. So statute allows us to waive the trade exam if the qualifying party that's going to be on this application is also the qualifying party on a license in another state that's comparable to the license that's being applied for here. So if you're applying for the B1 general commercial contractor license in another state, and that license has been active in the past 5 years, you could submit our out-of-state waiver form, which I will send a link, and you would fill out the top half of that form, and you would send that form to the board in the other state to fill out, and then that will get submitted with your application. And so we do a review here to make sure it is comparable. We don't pre-approve waivers. It's just something that's reviewed when we receive the application. But as long as it's comparable and has been active in the past 5 years, that could waive the trade exam and the experience requirement.
Okay, so Alfred clarified, and let's see if I can answer you. Alfred, you said For example, for residential, do you need construction and electrical and plumbing? So I'm still showing the screen, correct? Yep. I'm showing you what the scopes actually read within Arizona Administrative Code. So if you, depending on what you are looking to do within residential, say a general residential contractor, this classification, so this is the actual scope for what's allowed under the B. This classification allows the licensee to construct and repair all or any part of a residential structure or appurtenance, work related to electrical, plumbing, air conditioning systems, boilers, swimming pools, spas, and water wells must be subcontracted to an appropriately licensed contractor. So as you're reading that, what that tells you is that you can perform all work except for electrical, plumbing, air, boilers, swimming pools, spas, and water wells, but you can subcontract those as a general. So you, unless if you hold those licenses individually yourself as a business, you would have to subcontract. As a business, though, you could have both those or all the licenses required to do all that work. You would obviously need multiple QPs, though. We're in the state of Washington, no test required and no board, but we have 10 years of general contracting. So it sounds like you would be able to prove your experience, but maybe not a waiver. Is that right, Marley? Sorry, you broke up. Was that a yes?
Yes. Sorry, that's
Yeah.
correct. Yes.
Okay. Great. Okay, I think I caught up on questions. If I missed anybody, let me know. Miss Marley?
Yeah, so I posted that link. It has study materials for each trade exam. I will post the link for the statute and rules exam content outline in 1 second.
Cool. Are sample tests available, Miss Marley?
I believe PSI exams has some sample tests, but we wouldn't be administering those or offering them.
Of course. All right, I know Miss Marley's looking up to see if she can find that link. Oh, there it is. Page 6 has the information. All testing is through PSI. Correct. Yep.
And they have a phone number that's just for our applicants, so I will paste that into the chat as well.
If I can scroll down more quickly. There we go. So you said page 6 is where we were looking?
Yes. So that shows the question breakdown, and then it has study materials there, and then continued on to that second column.
So that link is in the chat if you need it. Okay. All right. Well, I won't keep anybody on, but if you do have additional questions, feel free to send them to us. I had the contact information there posted. And I believe Jesse posted the contact information for licensing. If not, I'll ask her to. Yep, she did at the very beginning. If you need my phone number, it's 602 616 3956. Marley, if you want to put yours in. Why is a bond required before the application is approved? What happens if the application is not approved and we paid for a bond?
Yeah, so it's required by statute that we have the bond when we receive the application. If we weren't going to approve it, you'd need to contact your bond company to see if they have any type of reimbursement and what their policy is about that.
Yeah, and I've honestly, John, never heard that as an issue, and I I don't know. I would guess that they would refund it, but I don't know that for a fact. All right. Well, again, you have our contact information. Any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You see that we're approachable. We're not just scary bureaucrats hiding behind a desk. Um, Again, feel free to call us if you run into any trouble with the portal. Um, and I really appreciate you guys attending, and good luck in the licensing. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.